I'm Brian Graff, Senior Vice President of GRC Advisory here at Abacode, and we're here to take you through the latest network attacks and security incidents that have occurred throughout the world. We're going to give you tips on how to help prevent these attacks from happening to you and give you insight as to why hackers choose these targets and the methods they use to carry out their attacks. So this is going to be an ongoing theme here at Unhacked, unfortunately, but we're going to talk about more about how hospitals are being inundated by this epidemic of ransomware. So 2 weeks ago, TransLogic PTS announced a major vulnerability in their pneumatic delivery systems. So TransLogic supplies 80% of the hospitals in the United States with their pneumatic delivery systems. And these systems are similar to what you would see at a bank, where you can transport canisters from the customer to the teller with checks or things inside the canister. So hospitals use similar systems to transport medication, to transport tissue samples, and things like that. The reason why they use these pneumatic systems is because they can be speed controlled. Some of these tissue samples and medications can't be delivered at too high a speed because you might destroy the sample. Hospitals can also be very, very large, so transporting samples or medication on foot would take an exceptionally long time in some instances. So you can imagine the chaos this would cause if a hacker got in and completely shut down the system, or even worse, just altered the speed and maybe the delivery of these medications so they go to the wrong place. They're destroyed without the person, the technician receiving it even knowing that there's an issue with the system. So you have delays, you have technicians resorting to manual processes, manual delivery, having to redo tests. And this is cumulative with all these other ransomware attacks that are occurring. Every single one of these attacks, even if it's not a life or death system, every single one is chipping away at the hours and the manpower that we have at these hospitals, which is already they're severely understaffed and they're severely overworked. So these additional problems, these ransomware attacks, they're eventually going to cause more deaths. They're going to cause more accidents and incidents at the hospitals because these employees now have to deal with manual workarounds on top of their already hectic schedules. And also thinking about not being able to get to your medication in time. Also, with these ransomware attacks just on traditional networks, they're not able to get to the information in time. We've seen multiple attacks cause hospitals to turn away patients because they cannot adequately serve them because the networks of critical systems are not functioning. So if you are an emergency room doctor and you can't get into your EHR to see this patient's medical records, is that going to cause you to maybe make a mistake if you have to shuffle through for manual records that may not be kept up to date? If you have to share records now manually, how is that going to affect patient care? It is definitely going to affect it in a negative way. And we're just talking about ransomware attacks on IT networks. So desktops and, like I said, EHR systems will get shut down. Things like this PTS system, which is vital for the economy of the hospital. But however, as we all know, there are systems in hospitals, several systems that if they are hacked, if they are shut down, if they're altered, will directly cause the deaths of patients. Things like oxygen systems, heart rate monitors. If I can hack a heart rate monitor and send a signal to the console saying, hey, everything's fine, his heart's beating normally, but really it's not. If I can do that to every heart monitor in the hospital, which are all networked, how is that going to affect monitoring? If I can hack into IV systems, if I can hack into delivery systems, and I can alter your dosage that you're getting, very easy to hack these systems. It's alarmingly easy. And the reason why is because these systems are built off of older kernels, or they're repurposed older systems. They aren't updated as much because they are very specialized. So laptops are used ubiquitously. Windows and Apple systems are being used by everyone all the time. So bugs, hacks are found quicker because there are more people in these systems. Traditionally, there aren't too many people mucking around in a heart rate monitor or in an oxygen delivery system, but now there are. Now there are people out there reverse engineering these systems for several purposes, for research and development, but also to launch attacks. There are organizations that will happily shut down heart rate monitors and tell a hospital, give me $100,000 or we're not turning it back on. There are organizations that will just turn the heart rate monitors off and are not looking for a payout. They are just looking to cause mass damage. And I do really feel like 2021, unfortunately, it feels like the year that a cyber attack is going to cause a mass casualty event. And unfortunately, it looks like hospitals are the prime target for this. And why is that? Because hospitals, unfortunately, have all of the weaknesses that any hacker would want to exploit. So they have very, very sensitive information. They have time-sensitive information. And for an organization, a regular organization, say, I'm in GRC advisory. If my laptop wasn't available for 2 hours, that's okay. I can work on that document or that report later. Doctors don't have 2 hours. They can't wait for these systems to come back online. The patients can't wait for these systems to come back online. So they're very vulnerable to an attack. A regular business may wait out a week before they pay a ransom. A hospital is going to have to pay it immediately if patients' lives are in danger. So that is very, very attractive to a hacker. They want to attack personnel that have to respond immediately, and no one has to respond more immediately than when it's a life or death situation. So beyond that, the hospitals also are very, very complex in terms of their systems. They have traditional networks. They also have Internet of Things. So things that we discussed like heart rate monitors, anything that's a device that's not a computer, but is connected to the network and sends and receives data and does some kind of processing, that's what we call Internet of Things. And the hospital is chock full of them. And the Internet of Things is basically the least secure layer of the internet, because like I said before, traditionally, no one was trying to hack into these systems. They weren't connected to the internet up until quite recently. But now, because everything is connected and these systems are connected to cloud systems, they're connected to outside networks, you don't even have to hack the hospital. You can hack a vendor, you can hack a partner, you can hack a consultant, and you can get into the hospital systems that way. So the hospital not only has to be secure, but it's only as secure as its least secure vendor. So count the number of vendors that an average hospital will have that has access to secure systems. It's a monumental task to have that vendor management program in place and make sure all these vendors are vetted, that the employees are doing background checks, that these vendors have security mechanisms on their own networks, on their own laptops, on their own systems. If they're buying a product or if they're buying a service from a cloud system, making sure that application or that web service has been penetration tested and gone through a compliance audit. That's just one of the myriad of issues that a hospital has to think about when they're trying to implement a security program and stop these ransomware attacks from occurring. They also have all the traditional weaknesses that a business has. So they have IT networks that are insecure. They have employees that have email accounts that need to be trained on not only how to spot a ransomware attack, how to spot a phishing attack, but also how to deal with PHI, with sensitive information. So they have a large number of employees that have to touch very sensitive information. So that means they're going to have access to sensitive systems. So when you go down the list of things that a hospital is supposed to do and what their personnel are responsible for, that makes them prime targets for hackers because they don't have a lot of time to respond to attacks. They have a lot of employees that have access to sensitive information that may not be very tech savvy or cybersecurity savvy, so they're prime targets for phishing attacks, for email account compromises, all types of attacks. So hospitals are really under the gun right now. and also, like I said, they have OT devices as well. So what's OT? That's operational technology, things that are not things that are connected to the internet that are not IT related. So again, the hospitals are completely chock full of these systems, and they all have to be monitored just like traditional networks have to be monitored. And that's more difficult than monitoring a traditional network. So what can hospitals do? Well, hospitals have to be realistic about what their security budgets need to be. They are protecting life, they are protecting the most sensitive of data, and they are protecting systems that have to be high availability, high failover. So they have to come to terms with the fact that their security budget, their compliance budget has to be commensurate with the level of risk. And we're talking about the risk of people dying. So that has to, at the executive level, there has to be an executive commitment to say, okay, we understand now that these attacks aren't just going to cause issues to our bottom line. They're going to cause patients to die. What are we going to do about it? So that's first the thing to do, is to get executive buy-in. So once you get executive buy-in, hospitals need to start building a program by doing an enterprise-wide risk assessment and making sure they have an inventory of all their critical systems, their processes, their personnel, and making sure that they are documenting all of their risks, the compensating controls that are preventing those risks from either occurring or impacting the organization heavily. And that will leave them with a to-do list, a plan of action and milestones. We have these risks that are currently in our organization, and we do not currently have compensating controls in place. This is our to-do list. This is what we need to address to make sure these attacks don't cause loss of life and loss of revenue. So that is always the first step in building a security program, be it a hospital or a normal business. It's just much more critical for a hospital because, again, we're talking about loss of life. That risk assessment is going to bear out different vulnerabilities, either in your preventative controls, your detective controls, but at every security and compliance program requires a few pillars of security mechanisms and processes to make sure that your system is secure. And that includes security awareness training, making sure you have procedures, policies, and plans in place for your personnel to follow to make sure that they are performing their duties in a secure manner, making sure that you are performing vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, that you're patching according to those vulnerabilities and according to a defined schedule, making sure you have a SIM in place. This is especially important for healthcare organizations because they are under HIPAA requirements and usually high trust requirements to log, aggregate, and correlate data from different devices to be able to detect unauthorized activity and attacks. And there's really no way to do that without a SIM in place. And a SIM also needs qualified personnel to install it and monitor it. So these are just some of the things that hospitals need to implement to make sure that they are prepared for this next wave of attacks, because I don't think we've seen anything yet, unfortunately. So that's all we have today for Unhacked. I'm Brian Gratt, and I will see you next week.